Hey everyone, welcome to the Vectra AI podcast. If you're new to the podcast, this is a series where the product team in Vectra AI talk about the latest threat, product innovation, attack, lab, tools, topics that we are passionate about. I'm Tiff, product marketing manager at Vectra AI, and today we have Arpan Sarkar with us, senior technical marketing engineer. And Arpan, why don't you give us a quick intro of yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Arpan Sarkar. I am the Senior Technical Marketing Engineer for Threat Hunting and Security Investigations here at Vectra AI.
Cool. And so today our topic is Microsoft Identity Security Testing. And Arpan has actually done a lot of research in this area, and he actually built open source tool around this. So we will talk more about it today. And so first of all, let's start. Arpan, can you tell us the challenge that you've seen in conducting security testing?
Yes. So security testing is one of those things we all know we must be doing and know the benefits of, yet very few of us actually leverage it. And doesn't necessarily have to do with the organization or the people themselves. Security testing, like many other things in the realm of security, is simply easier said than done. And that has to do with several different factors, and oftentimes a combination of these factors. So we have things like cost, which is one of the major factors. Cost can come from things like cost of acquiring tools or the products to perform security testing, cost of getting the people and the resources to run these tests, etc. Then we have other factors like ineffective processes. So this can be testing too much or testing too little, or even not scoping the right things, all of which ultimately leading to no actionable results. And then we have things like infrequency. The modern enterprise environment is hyperdynamic environment. We have new users or identities getting added constantly, configurations getting updated, or new configurations getting deployed by your CSP, new features getting added, and a lot of different other things. On top of that, we have attackers that are constantly trying to find that one vulnerability, that one exploit that they can target. All of this requires an organization to not just perform security tests, but do it regularly and very frequently. However, if our processes are too costly or too ineffective, chances are we're not going to do that, repeat them very often. Then we have things like challenges with acquiring the skill set to perform these security tests. We have challenges with building the infrastructure. Not every organization in the environment in the world can create a replica of their production environment, and testing on production environment is always difficult. And then ultimately, it comes down to lack of tools. Now, there are necessarily not lack of tools out there, but some of them lack coverage. Some of them are really not that effective, haven't been updated for a really long time. So all of this kind of combine and create different challenges for organizations to perform security testing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And which is why this leads you to actually develop an open source tool that can help tackle these challenge, right? So why don't you tell us more about what is this tool? So what is MAAD-AF?
Yes. So MAAD-AF, unlike what most people believe it stands for, actually stands for Microsoft 365 and Azure AD Attack Framework. This is an attack framework that we developed to enable simple, fast, and effective security testing for Microsoft 365 and Entra ID environments. And the goal was really to enable all security teams with a tool that everybody in the team can use with minimal effort, with minimal set of requirements,
Yeah.
and perform tests.
Yeah, that makes
Okay,
sense. So let's talk a little bit more about what does this tool do and how does it work?
sure. So, what does MAAD-AF do? Well, it allows security teams to perform and execute pre and post compromise attack techniques. However, it is predominantly a post compromise attack tool.
Mhm.
It does that by targeting various different Microsoft Cloud services like Azure AD, SharePoint, Discovery, Exchange, etc. And it does all that by using living off the land techniques, which means it's using the inherent native functionalities of the cloud service, and not relying on any zero-day exploits that will get patched in future. And it's also an open source tool, so everybody can use it. It's free to use, everyone can contribute to it, and everyone can validate it. On top of that, in its latest version, in its current version, MAAD-AF offers more than 50 different modules that security teams can use to test different services. So it starts all the way from running different reconnaissance within the environment, to making changes to configurations in Exchange, to exfiltrating data from SharePoint and using eDiscovery. If you're looking at the MITRE map for attack techniques, MAAD-AF currently covers nearly 50% of all the techniques across Microsoft 365, Azure AD, and SaaS matrices combined.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good coverage to get started with.
And what are some of the recommended attack paths that you would recommend the teams to use with this tool?
So MAAD-AF is actually quite modular, and it allows you to define your custom scope and build out your testing plan. However, there are some recommended techniques, some recommended attack paths that you can use. So for example, we have one here, which is inspired by Scattered Spider. Now, this attack path doesn't really emulate a single attack that Scattered Spider did, but it actually takes different techniques from Scattered Spider's arsenal that they used across different attacks, and kind of uses them to build this attack testing plan that any security team can use to maybe understand their defenses against Scattered Spider techniques. So for instance, here Scattered Spider is accessing a compromised identity and then running a bunch of different reconnaissance within their environment, moving on to creating a backdoor account to establish persistence, followed by assigning it backdoor account, assigning it roles. Then they move on to reset the password for another account, disable its MFA, modify some trusted IP and trusted location policies within the environment, so they can gain access to more resources that can get around some of the conditional access policies, which ultimately gives them access to SharePoint, finding data within SharePoint and exfiltrating data within SharePoint, and then ultimately setting up an email deletion rule within the environment so that they can hide email alerts coming into the compromised user's mailbox. Now, what's also interesting is, like I said, you can the tool is very modular, and you can kind of start getting creative and play around with some of these attack paths. So, for instance, if you wanted to change this up a little bit, once you have reset the password, disable the MFA, you can actually use that new account that you now have access of, and then use that to perform additional attack techniques, and this is where you can start to see how your defenses really fare against some of these complex attacks, and if your defenses can actually change some of these different identities together that are part of a single attack.
Yeah, that's really powerful because sometimes maybe the focus will be to test whether the attacker can actually access the environment, but sometimes the missing part is what can they actually do after they have the compromised identity, and they can just change these access, add this backdoor, and there's so much more that they can do. And the point is whether their team can detect all these activities with their current security tool set. So quick question on this, how fast can an attacker do all of these from your experience?
I mean, it really depends in a real world environment how much time an attacker requires to gather all this information, depending on the complexities of the target environment. But it is fairly quick, actually, to run some of these attacks in an environment. It is fairly quick. You can get done within a couple of minutes as well.
Yeah, that's really like the speed and scale of how they can do after they compromise an identity. So that's really insightful. And so my next question is then, what does this tool mean for security teams? How do you think it can benefit their operations?
Yes. So the idea is for security teams to run this as often and as regularly as possible. And then what we have seen with a lot of the customers where we have run MAAD-AF assessment is that the customers have constantly identified gaps in their existing security tools, whether it was misconfigurations or just gaps in the detection portfolio. They've also realized importance of correlating different identities and the value of fast prioritization of attacks, all of which is kind of very important when we're dealing with different identities and these complex attack scenarios. And like I mentioned, a very fast-paced attack sequence.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, and it's just important to battle test it and stimulate real attacks in your environments to know, like, to keep up to date on like the latest attacker behavior and whether you're like safe and you're protected. If you want to know and try this tool in your environment, feel free to check out our gap analysis, which basically our team will sit down with you and use this MAAD-AF tool in your environment to help you identify any of your identity exposure gap. And with that, we are going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much again, Arpan, for joining us and introducing such useful and simple testing tool for everyone to benefit from. And next slide, if you haven't checked out other of our Vectra AI podcasts, do check it out on YouTube. We are also on Spotify now. And with that, thanks again for joining us today and hope to see you in the next one.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Bye.